Welcome back to Tech Tuesday here on Northwest Digital News. We have some special guests joining us from Fortinet Accelerate. We have Tim Kubiak on the screen there with Harry Brelsford joining us live from the Fortinet event. Kevin Hunter and Kyle Torgerson here at the broadcast desk on Northwest Digital News. Well, Harry, I know that Tim is on a short time frame, so have Tim introduce himself and give a little bit of his backstory, and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, I'll ask the person, sir, what is your story? What do you do, and why are you here?
Sure. So I'm with Exclusive Networks, and we're one of Fortinet's global distributors. And actually, I'm part of their expansion in the North American market. We have a strong SMB segment that we've built our business on over the last 10 years and came into the Exclusive family about 18 months ago.
Okay. This is a European distributor trying to enter the U.S. market.
Absolutely is. So we operate in 32 countries, ship into 180 countries on a monthly basis, and entered the U.S. market for the first time in July of 2017, and actually just recently expanded into Canada with an acquisition.
So we're at a security show with Fortinet, and it's my understanding that's one of your niches as a distributor, security. Is that right?
Absolutely. So we actually really only distribute in two areas, cybersecurity and cloud security. So our focus is highly specialized, highly based on engineering and education for our partner communities.
Yeah, and what kind of conversations would you be having here? It looks like I'm guessing 1,000 to 2,000 attendees. It's a fairly good sized show.
It's a good sized show. There's over 375 U.S. partners represented here, and the conversations are everything from what they're seeing in the FortiGate space on the firewall to where sandboxing fits both as a default, does SD-WAN play, and then a little bit about endpoint and their FortiFabric and their ecosystem.
Yeah, and to kind of connect the dots for this audience on Northwest Digital News, so this is a B2B network versus SMB Nation. We're a little bit more business to channel or business to partner.
Okay.
But we work well together because it takes all the players.
Right.
But gentlemen, the connection here would be to contact a partner, an MSP. We've talked about it a lot on this show, and ask to learn more about Fortinet. And then the MSP, the partner, is then going to go to their distributor. And let's see if I understand. A distributor does, in my mind's eye, a couple of things. They educate the partner on both the product and the sales method.
Absolutely correct.
Often provide financing to the partner.
Again.
And then also maybe product support and what do you fill in the gaps?
So we actually have taken a little different approach even beyond that. So logistics is table stakes. In our case, multinational deals are table stakes, right? Okay. But education is one of the forefronts, and what we've done is we've invested in a technology evangelist. His job is solely to look at the market and answer questions and do research based on partner requests. So rather than try to determine what our partners need and what the market's demanding, is to go out and have those conversations, whether it's CISO level with the partner or the partner's ownership groups.
Yep. And before I let you go, I understand you have a super secret party tonight. We're not going to post the address on the air.
No, post it. Go for it.
But if for some reason we have listeners here in Orlando at the Swan and Dolphin, you can go by your booth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and your booth is right at you, Kevin. You'll like this. This booth is right at the bottom of the escalator that everybody has to ride down into the trade show hall where the food is, and so on. So I compliment you. Any questions about the role of a distributor or anything before we let Tim go to lecture?
Yeah, Tim, I wanted to mention something to you because you caught my attention. We said you're in 32 countries, distribute into 180 plus. I produce content that goes into 220 countries and territories around the world, and produce enough following that I earn revenue in 161 countries every single month with the content that I produce around. So I'm thinking about maybe there's some synergy we should be having some conversation about because your distribution area is actually could very well be overlapping with much of what we're hitting with content around the world. So love to chat with you outside of the broadcast.
Absolutely. I'd love that opportunity.
There we go. And the final word I want to pull off your website was disruptive. So why do you guys have the word disruptive up on your website? Is that your mission statement?
So our history is finding the technologies as they evolve and looking at where the market's going, not where it's at. So when you look at broadline distribution, you're finding people with large revenues. We're looking for the interesting technologies, best of breed, and where it's heading.
Yeah. Well, I know I got.
Thank you so much for
get
the
to
time.
lecture.
I will.
Okay.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you, Tim. Take care.
Take care.
All righty. So, gents, now you're stuck with me coming to you live. Look at this. I got a little branding here. We got Fortinet Accelerate. Here's a different view of it.
Nice.
It's a hardcore security conference. Very interesting. My observations just at a high level, and by the way, forgive me because the conference just started this morning, so I don't have a lot of great updates for you. If we called this show Tech Thursday, I would have great updates for you.
Yeah, Tech Thursday.
I'll tell you this. Well, this is where the big boys play, is in security. We've talked about this ad nauseum on the show, that cybersecurity is probably one of the greatest opportunities in the technology field today. And gentlemen, what I've observed is, and he kind of alluded to it, I think he said 36% of the attendees were from the USA. That's absolutely true. I would say 50%, and I've only been here half a day on the East Coast, but 50% are foreign from Asia, and maybe another 10 or 15% from Latin America, Europe, and so on. But what's interesting to me is we have serious conversations at Homeland Security and beyond about security. It's interesting that this conference is overrepresented by foreign nationals, and they certainly have a right to be here. And I am in no way of implying this is a hacker festival. This Fortinet's a very serious company, but it's just interesting how they got traction with foreign nationals. Quite frankly, more so than U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
What do you know?
No doubt. I wanted to mention something for the benefit of our viewers, because it's always interesting to see who each of these tech events, who they have open for them. And this year, Yusaku Mochizuki, who was the opener for Fortinet Accelerate, he was actually on America's Got Talent. Here's Kyle showing a little background of his Diablo artist performance, but quite a character. Did an absolutely exceptional show. So I don't know if you got a chance to see any of that, but a great opening act for Fortinet Accelerate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to go to 2 lectures this afternoon. So even though in high school I had a reputation of skipping class and going skiing up in Anchorage, Alaska, I'm a changed man. I'm a changed man, and I've left my old ways behind. So I'm going to a lecture mid-afternoon on the East Coast about becoming a cloud service provider. We call those CSPs.
Right.
And a managed service provider with a security concentration. And what that means is, this lecture in particular is not, obviously security is a lucrative consulting field, but what they're going to do, and I believe we've had the talk briefly, we need to have it again, but they're really going to focus in on the 5G standard that's emerging. So 5G for your mobile phone. These are early days, but Kevin, as you well know from a career in business, the spoils go to the victor who gets it early, or the early bird gets the worm.
Yes.
And so I'm intending to hit that one, and then there's another SMB lecture a little bit later on. And what's significant about that, about the second lecture for small, medium business, is if you've had a chance to see in the background the audience going to and fro here at the conference, there's a lot of suit jackets and even ties here. So you're going to see that walking by. There's always the me's with the T-shirts and the golf shirts, but Fortinet is probably having a larger conversation in state and local and federal government at the enterprise level in education, and those tend to be what, again, I affectionately call the big boys.
Sure.
And what Fortinet's trying to do by engaging with SMB Nation, by engaging with Tim at Exclusive Networks, what we're trying to do is help Fortinet break into a much, much bigger market called small and medium business, numerically. And it's good and bad. It has its challenges because the small business doesn't have the enterprise budget. on the left hand, but on the right hand, there's a lot more small businesses. So it's always a little bit of a yin and yang as you help a product try and push down into SMB, if that makes sense.
Well, you know what? There a little bit of a recap of what you stated. Then that in the early bird gets the worm, and when it comes to technology and paying attention to what's going on in technology, a person doesn't have to put a ton of time and effort into at least being aware of where things are going, but having some understanding, having some knowledge early in the game is really, really vital. I can say even to what I've done with online content, it only happened because I was not only paying attention to what I was doing in traditional media, but also observing what a lot of traditional media people were doing in terms of moving to online media and paying attention to who was going and then getting involved early enough in it. And so I had a chance to, through trial and error, learn what was working, what wasn't. And today, in today's world where this is so relevant, I can launch something that goes, 70% of what I put up will have a viral outcome. But I got to learn that when people were still thinking that this online stuff wasn't even important.
Yeah, and to some extent, we're early days. I mean, security's been with us forever. Okay, let me say that. However, we're in relatively early days at the level of sophistication concerning cyber security and some of the tactics that are being used. And you may recall several months ago we had our friend Joshua Lieberman on from another trade show who's Mr. Security. We need to get him back. So to some extent, we're early days. So it's kind of cool on the one hand to be learning about 5G security before 5G's even rolled out. But Kevin, to your point about entry into this profession, whereas Tim at Exclusive Networks was speaking towards having a technology evangelist to help you almost one-on-one with your needs as a partner, Fortinet, I'm sure Fortinet has that, but I will tell you this. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, they had 3 days of certification training. So Fortinet has a very robust certification curriculum and certification program, and that is also how you enter a new field, right? Is you get street cred and get the certifications. It balances out what I think is a pretty cool approach with Exclusive Networks to have subject matter experts who's at your beck and call.
Exactly.
So I think you need a little bit of both. And hey, let me change the subject briefly before we go, because it's interesting you talked about content and tactics. This week, I am here in Orlando at the Fortinet Accelerate conference, but I have other friends at a show you may know that I didn't realize was 100,000 people in Las Vegas. There's a show called the NAB, apparently the National Association of Broadcasters. It's like their 30th year, 100,000 people. And with all due respect, it's a little bit more your world. I kept seeing my friends on Facebook saying they were going to it, and I thought, wait, National Association of Home Builders, NAHB, and I went, it's the National Association of Broadcasters. Are you familiar with this show? It seems to be huge.
Yeah, I am familiar with it. There's an interesting thing, and this isn't a slap against anybody that's involved there, but there's a really interesting thing in broadcasting in general that I would say that there are many players in the business who are still hanging on to the traditional models of what media was. And even with other media people that I interact with on a regular basis, they're completely lost when they start talking to me about what I do, and they go right back to that. I don't if it's I call it a little bit of an advertising mindset, but they think about all the pizzazz and everything that you put into broadcasting, and it's a very different reason that people go to the web. And so, almost today, while I'm still in broadcasting, almost today, my sector is more online creators than it is actually broadcasting. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does. It's interesting when you talk about old school media that, don't get me wrong, I miss the old school days, this SMB Nation, when we had the print magazine and they couldn't measure anything and it was expensive. That said, and in fact, with some of yours, we pivoted to embrace digital because, you know, you can't run from measurement. Better to lead the parade, right?
Right.
It's not going to work to hide from having everything with analytics and measurement. Instead, why not be out in front of it and develop expertise with marketing analytics, right?
Yep. You know what's interesting is you're aware of my background with the car business and looking at some of those old tried and true forms of media and or advertising. I actually got a dealership to do this with me because they spent an extraordinary amount of money every single month just marketing and some of these direct mail tactics to their to what they saw as their customer base. And so they spent around $20,000 a month doing this, and me suggesting, hey, why don't we try integrate some of these so-called tried and true ways or some of these new ways. And so we took postcards, we took sealed letters, we took flyers that were printed front and back, but the customer could just look at, you know, and decide whether they wanted to engage with them. But here was the interesting thing. They had been doing this for a lot of years without ever actually coming up with a way of measuring their response. And so we decided response only qualified if somebody showed up to the dealership with either their postcard, their letter, or their mailer, or they called somebody at the dealership. So we also kept track of that. Or they had to email the dealership. So in some way they had to engage back. And do you know that the highest rate of engagement was actually a postcard, not a flyer? But even that rate of engagement was 0.00068. And that was 3 times better than postcards. And postcards are about 4 times better than letters. So you see how low that number is, and yet people are still spending a lot of money in those old broken models. Kyle, you had something earlier.
Yeah, I was looking at the National Association of Broadcasters just to talk about that real quick. And in the About Us, it's meant for radio and television. And it talks about technology innovation. So even they are starting to recognize that, you know, maybe our audience is dwindling and maybe we actually have to look at stuff. We're kind of getting in the red here. So that's just
Kyle, I would echo that. I looked at the site once, you know, I kept seeing all these Facebook posts, which again, that's another indicator of what's going on.
Right.
And people I respect were going to the show. So, you know, you combine the two. So I clicked over, and it looks like they are starting to weave in technology innovation into the conversation over there. But Kevin, to your point, it does have kind of an old-timey feel.
Yeah.
It's
very much.
An older show. No question about it. So, any event, hey, I better drop because this hotel Wi-Fi is starting to gurgle a little bit. You know, we've had that before from conferences, so I don't want to go freeze frame on you. But thank you for having a conversation with me today.
All right, perfect. Thanks, and thanks, Harry, for bringing Tim Kubiak on as well. Very interesting to have a little chat with him. So, Kevin Hunter here on the broadcast, Kyle Torgerson, and thanks to Harry Brelsford, who joined us from Fortinet Accelerate. Take care, Harry.
This concludes today's live programming on Northwest Digital News. Thanks for joining us for this special broadcast. Heard around the world in more than 70 countries on YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, Facebook, and Twitch TV. If you enjoyed a story or guest we had here on Northwest Digital News and would like to strut your stuff on the broadcast, email us today at wainfo2017@gmail.com or call or text to 360-545-3501. We're always interested in unique stories, topics, and guests to share with our worldwide audience. Before you go, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up and comment on the live stream. And for those of you who'd like to financially support the broadcast, you can do so at patreon.com/Northwest Digital News. We thank you for your patronage. On behalf of Chris Bornstead, Kyle Torgerson, Stephanie Hunter, and all the people that made this broadcast possible, I'm Kevin Hunter. Till next time, take care.